So, I'll start first, because I want to talk about how I got into the Honkai. And this person is at fault, right there. As I mentioned, we were playing Genshin, and I was like, you know what, I'm still having a lot of fun with Genshin, but this story sucks ass. So what's going on here? And he's like, yeah, don't worry, keep going, it's gonna get better, and pyramid scheme, it was involved, yes. Basically, he said, if you get into Honkai, I'll get loads of money from Hoyo. They will basically drown me in cash. And I'm like, you know what? I can get behind that. And I have given Honkai a go. No, so the reason why was that Stipple said, you know what? The writing, the story, is on a completely other level in Honkai. It is really good. You should really try it out. And of course, if the story is good, that's where I go. And the rest was history, really. And that's how I started. That's playing Honkai. Of course, Stipple, you were there first. So what made you actually say, you know what, I want to try out Honkai? Like, I have experienced Genshin and I need more gacha in my life. So, what made you say that?
It's a good question. I don't really know. I think the main, I kind of do know. The main reason I even thought about checking it out and downloading it was because I saw something. I don't know where I saw it. Mm-hmm. But I saw, Honkai Star Rail were giving a free 5-star.
Yes, they were.
Period, like from now until I think it's 2.1.
Until forever.
Until the current patch, and then at the end of that, it's gone. So again,
right.
This limited supply, this limited character that they were offering, and I was like, well, I see the reason. I understood at this point. I understood what a 5-star meant. Because I literally had like 0. And I finally got my first one, and I was like, wow, they're literally just giving away a 5-star, and the 5-star seems like it's pretty good. It's not like the MC, the main character, and it's not garbage. So yeah, that was kind of what enticed me, and then I saw it, and I was like, oh, and it's turn-based. I kind of like turn-based games. Like I mentioned before, I'm a big, classic Final Fantasy fan, so I played a lot of 7, 8, 9, 10. Those were all turn-based, and I was like, yeah, no, this seems like I mean, how bad could it be? It looks
well, let me tell you.
It looks interesting, and I was kind of getting a little bit exhausted and tired of Genshin, and I explained why before.
We've covered that.
So we won't go into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where it was started. I downloaded it, and then I just gave it a go and I could play it on my phone. So the great thing about and also maybe.
Well, we'll get to that thought. Hold that thought, bro. Hold that thought. We'll get there.
But the game is very accessible because you can play it on your phone, you can play it on your PC, you can play it on your PlayStation. It's really, really accessible, and it's so seamless that I'm sure some of the people in the chat understand that they have played on phone, on PC or on console, and they've switched very easily between those. And it's a big draw for this kind of game where it does want you to check in every day. So,
and it's a huge strength of the game as well, I gotta say, because I don't think I have ever experienced a game where you can literally just go from playing on your PC, picking up a phone and walking away and literally continue playing on a phone. Let's say you need to take a bus or a tram or a train somewhere, and you're like, right, well, I have a couple of hours, and you can continue playing the game on the phone. Exactly the same game, not a cut down version of it, not a different game with the same name of, a mobile phone game, but exactly the same game that it just seamlessly transitions from one device to another.
Yeah, and it's not unique to Honkai Star Rail or Genshin Impact. I mean, this is
it's not, but
industry kind of trend, and I think it's a very, in most cases, it's very consumer positive, and it just means that you're able to access your game. You're not losing progress. So, for some people, you might prefer just to play on your couch, on your console. For other people, you prefer like sitting at your PC and playing it on the computer. And then there's others that are like, oh, I just want to play it on the bus. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was actually playing Honkai Star Rail on the bus. And the reason that it works well and better than Genshin in that way is because it's turn-based. So there's no action combat. You don't have to be, struggling with the touchscreen controls on your phone. It's all like, you can wait and just think about your actions, or you can do the auto battle, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But,
we'll talk about that. Yes, absolutely.
No, it was it was a lot more accessible compared to Genshin, where I felt like I could only really play Genshin on the console or on PC. Realistically, well, this game is like, I can literally just I'd be lying in bed, do like half an hour, maybe do some story, go I go into work on the bus, do some dailies, do some simulated universe, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it felt like it was going to kind of fit in a little bit more nicely into my schedule, and also the Genshin was wearing thin. So yeah, I gave it a go. I liked the intro, and I saw how much more generous it was with the resources. You get your guaranteed 5-star pull in the first 50 pulls of the standard banner, which is not something that Genshin does. That you don't get any guaranteed 5 stars at all. And then you get the free 5-star with Dr. Ratio, as we know. So we all have that character.
We all have Dr. Ratio, right?
And you can still get him. I mean, if you haven't got him, you can actually still get him. Like I said, because of the 2.1 patch that just released, he's still available, I believe. But so that's kind of what all led me to giving it a go, and then I just enjoyed it. And at that point, it was soon after I pretty much just dropped Genshin entirely.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And in your opinion, and I know we've covered this already, but in your opinion, what's the biggest difference between the two games, between Genshin and Honkai? I mean, without stating the obvious that one is action RPG and the other one is a turn-based RPG.
Yeah, no, I think the main point I would make there is that it's just the onboarding specifically is way better. It's way fairer. It's more interesting in terms of its story and how it guides you through the actual narrative. But yeah, I think that the most important point there, I think, is how much more generous it is and how much fairer it is. More fair. I don't say it's like fair, but it's definitely
fairer than Genshin.
A lot, like significantly, where you can I can list, like I was listing some of the items that are actually that you can say are genuinely objectively better, like the energy system, the trailblaze power. You get quite a lot of fuel as free to play. You get that reserve fuel that even if you don't play one day, you'll still be generating your extra energy. Yeah, the
slow energy, isn't it? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not every hour or whatever it is for the standard one, but it's like you multiply by 3, and it just essentially just means you have more opportunity to like leave the game and come back if you really wanted to. So there's a lot of kind of quality of life systems in there, and like I mentioned, the guaranteed 5-star, the more generous kind of onboarding. You do get a lot of pull resource. You get a lot of stellar jades, as they're called in the game.
Yep.
It's just significantly, like you notice it, especially in the early, like the first 20-30 hours. I was surprised at how many characters I had. I was like, whoa, I have like 15 characters already, and in Genshin I think I have maybe a few more, and I've barely played this game compared to Genshin.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of made me think about it, and I started talking to you about it and saying, okay, well, this feels like it's from a different studio, and it is.
It is, because it's a different dev studio, right? It's the same publisher, though.
But it's the same publisher. It's the same umbrella. That's why I felt like, would they not just make the same exact, a copy of the systems? And in some ways they did, but they did improve the onboarding, and the early resources you get are you could say that they're front loaded, but at the same time, I do think it leads to a better experience overall. So I will say that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And in my opinion, yes, you're absolutely correct. But I do have to mention that you can really see where the resources for Honkai Star Rail went compared to Genshin.
Yeah.
So in Genshin, you have absolutely,
right?
Yeah, you have gorgeous scenery. You have absolutely fantastic looking world, huge map, amazingly huge map, exploration. Character design, of course, and their how they move, etc. But animations. But you can see with the Honkai, they said, you know what? We need to get people into the story, because this is gonna be a story-first game, and we're gonna put one of the most resources we're gonna put is, of course, is the characters, right? And their ultimates, etc., because ultimates in Honkai are amazing. But after that, we're gonna put money into the script writers, into the quest designers, into the story. And you can really, really see that, because from the get-go, the story is probably the strongest part for me, and this is why I stuck with the Honkai until now, because the story I was like, I really want to know what happens next. And yeah, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. We'll get to that. But I think the biggest difference is that the story, where they put money, Genshin compared to Honkai, and the story is definitely one of the things that Honkai nails and puts probably more money than Genshin, that's for sure, into.
Yeah,
so,
I would agree.
While we're here, while we're kind of talking about the story a little bit, why don't you tell us, where are you in Honkai right now? Have you, like, where in the story are you?
Yeah, so in Honkai Star Rail,
Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
I got to the end of the 2.0 patch, so I was up to date about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, yep.
And they just released 2.1, as people would know, which introduced, more story, Acheron,
Yep, Acheron,
as we know, as the limited 5-star.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I'm basically, more or less up to date. I haven't done the latest content, but I have done everything apart. I would say I've done all the main quests. I've done pretty much all those orange, the Trailblazer quests.
Trailblazer quests, yeah.
I think I haven't done all of the character quests, or the purple ones.
Yep.
I've done a few, and then I haven't done a lot of the blue, like the standard side quests.
Yeah.
So the way I played it was I did the Trailblazer quests and the main quests, and a little bit of the character stories, and then I spent a lot of time on the weekly and daily activities.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. And I'm kind of similar, but I have not done the Trailblazer quest. I only done one Trailblazer quest. I've done a few character quests, but I have completed 2.0 story in Honkai. So you can say that we have experienced quite a bit of a gameplay. Maybe definitely not so much as some people, but definitely more than others. So we have more experience with Honkai than we do with Genshin. Now, Tremaclema is bringing up a very good point that they don't find graphics in Honkai any attractive. And I gotta say, yes, and the biggest drawback for Honkai is that lighting is just non-existent. Lighting is just not coded into the game, which is really, really surprising for the game that came out a year ago.
Yeah, in parts it looks like something from, if you go by console graphics,
Yeah.
I'd say something more like PlayStation 3. Maybe just sharper because, we're high res.
Like PlayStation 3, only without utilizing the shadows.
But yeah, at its best, it looks like a modern game. It looks like, maybe like a PlayStation kind of 4 type game.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit behind because it's a mobile type experience first. It's developed for mobiles, but it looks good. Overall, I think I'd say it's good. It's not great, but at its best, it looks at its best, it looks really flashy, especially all the ultimates and the character abilities and everything like that. Like when you're in combat, it's like, I gotta say, it is very visually appealing, and that's even when you're using something like auto battle, it still looks really, really good. And I find, so, like, I'm still paying attention to the game, even if I'm not really playing it. If that makes sense.
Okay. Interesting, and I have a slightly different take on that, but I think we will get to that part a little bit later on. But right, so what we were talking a little bit about the story, so why don't we revisit that? And what did you think of the story and characterization in Honkai?
Yeah, I thought it was overall, much better than Genshin, since we were talking about Genshin. Much better. But comparing it to other games that I've liked, and I'm talking about JRPGs specifically, more recently, just to give examples, I'm currently playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So as I was playing some of the later content in Honkai Star Rail, some of the later story content, I was playing Rebirth at the same time, and it was kind of, I was comparing it, because it's hard not to compare when you're playing two games side by side, and there are some similarities. They're both kind of JRPG inspired. Final Fantasy VII has this kind of pseudo turn-based system where you can pause the game when you're like, say your active time bar, as it's called in the game, is full. So you can make actions based on that. So there is like an element of like a turn-based system in there, and like compared to the story overall, like there's certain sections in Honkai Star Rail where I was like, wow, I'm actually kind of impressed. I had a great time. I'm sure we'll go into more detail, but there's certain points where I was like, that I was quite surprised and impressed, and some of the characters are actually quite developed and in depth, and I actually got some feels, even some emotional moments there. But then other times it did feel like I could kind of see a little bit of Hoyo, a little bit of that Hoyo stank, where.
What are you talking about?
Just in terms of the writing and.
Oh, in terms of, right, okay.
The pacing, where it's like, you could hurry this up a little bit. Like, we don't need to spend so much time on this one quest, or this one area, or this one whatever is being covered at the time. So like, I would say it's mixed. It's not all good. But
it's not all good, and we're actually gonna dive deeper into that now, because I want to kind of cover different parts of the story, because it develops, the writing develops, and the pacing develops, not always in a good way, as the game progresses. And I want to really kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, because I think that the story is the strongest point of Honkai Star Rail, and I think it's good to talk about what they have done right here, and of course what they have not done right. So, and I kind of agree with Stipple there. The one thing I'm gonna say is that I'm a little bit more lenient. I think that it has very, very good story for the most part, and we'll cover the not so good part soon as well. And I feel that the pacing in the beginning of the game is definitely better than in the latter half. Should I say. But which brings me to kind of let's kind of dive in deeper now, and I want to talk first about the Herta Station part. So the intro to the game, what brings you into the game, what sucks you in. And I thought that was done fantastically. After the Herta Station was over, or even before, even in the opening parts of the game, I was fully immersed, I was fully sucked into the game, and I was just hanging at the edge of my seat, waiting to know what is gonna happen. Because, if you have played the game a little bit, you don't actually encounter MC until a little bit into the story. Not straight away. At first, you are of course greeted with Kafka and Silver Wolf, and you play from their perspective, which is really cool, and you have no idea what's going on, but stuff is happening. Station is getting attacked, you're infiltrating the station, you're like trying to outsmart all these different security measures from the station. You're breaking in and you're not on the same side as the attackers, and what the hell is going on? And then they place this artifact right into the main character's chest, and hey, by the way, you're now playing the game as the main character. And you're like, what? I thought that the pacing there throughout until the very, very end was absolutely superb. The way they told the story was fantastic. Yeah, it was absolutely linear, but for the big and for the most part, Honkai is very, very linear experience, but that does not take away from the story and storytelling of the game. And I think Herta Station, to me, what like made me stay with the game and play until the end of the patch 2.0 that I have played. So what about you, Stipple? Because
It was a little bit different for me. Like the intro definitely sucked me in. Like no doubt about it. It didn't stick with me as much as it did for you. Definitely, like based on what you said. No. Yeah, like I liked it, but I wasn't like struck by it as in like, wow, this is amazing, or this is like a really cool, idea. At first, I was like, oh, I was playing it. I thought, we set up some of the characters. I don't know who Kafka is, but we do know now that she becomes like one of the main threads throughout the entire story, and that's continuing.
And I'm sure she'll be back.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the Stellaron hunters. But you get introduced to the MC, and that's cool. Like you can literally get the Stellaron inserted into your chest, and that was a cool moment. That was definitely cool.
Unlike an alien where it inserts out of the chest.
So, all really cool stuff. And Herta Station itself, like, I actually do really like what they did with that. There's the different areas. They could have done a little bit more, like in terms of the actual, like when you get to Hertas and you can explore and you can walk around. It does feel like they could have added a few more like areas within the station.
Right.
It does to me. There's like that, the main hub area, and that looks very unique and kind of.
Oh, the main hub is fantastic. The control center, I mean, yeah.
The control center, yeah.
That is like, amazing.
Visually really cool, but then a lot of the rest of the station looks very samey. I don't know if you got that.
I got that as well. Yes, it's pretty much corridors going up and down, and then punctuated by maybe like an open area.
Yeah, and then that's where I kind of saw the difference in terms of the the budget allocation and also the level.
The level design, I think we're talking about here, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That was and what they chose to like spend their money on. So. Yeah, and it was cool, and it was a good intro, great setup, but I actually enjoyed the first planet a lot more.
Well, let's dive into that, because I think you gave us the thoughts on Herta Station now, so Yarilo 6, or is that Yarilo 4?
It's Yarilo 6.
It's Yarilo 6, there we go, Yarilo 6, so...
You had it in as 4, and then I changed it to 6, because that's the correct
one.
The Yarilo 6, since I was talking about it, I really loved it. This was since we're on it now, this was my favorite planet, because the way it works is you're literally on a space train. It's called Honkai Star Rail, and you're traveling between the stars and the planets. So you get to Yarilo 6, and it's the first planet you visit. You get introduced to the main cast of characters. You have March 7th, you have Dan Heng, you have what's her name, the orbital red-haired woman. Himiko, And it's fun. You start exploring, and it turns out that this is kind of like a civilization that's still being developed. So it's a developing civilization. They don't really have that much technology.
They regressed, right? They regressed. That's
exactly, and it's an interesting kind of setup. So you land there, and it's a snow-covered planet. It's like really barren, but really cool because it's literally snowing the whole time. And this is kind of wild. Visually, when you just arrive, it's really cool. and yeah, you kind of start getting into it, and then you're basically sent down into the depths underground, and you start to realize that there's more at stake
more
here.
to it than meets the eye.
And there's actual factions. So you have the factions, the above grounders and the overworlders, and then the underground faction, and how they interrelate. And then you actually get in your party, you get an overworlder that joins you, and then they're reacting to everything that's going on down there, and they don't actually know.
I take offense as to how you do not mention the name of the literally best character in the game.
I know. Well,
I highly take offense to that. Okay, it's Bronya, people. Bronya that joins you. Bronya. Okay.
But yeah, no, Bronya's great. And then Seela, obviously, you meet Seela and Bronya, and their back and forth is really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you get to see those different perspectives. And the character writing is really strong in this part of the game. And it develops as you start doing those missions in the underworld. And you're starting to piece together what's actually happening, and because the whole idea is there's a Stellaron and going awry on each of these planets, and it's doing something to mess with people's minds, or the actual it's changing something on the planet. It's almost it's this force that we don't quite understand.
Which I think in Yarilo 4 or 6, since you changed it to 6. Probably 4.
It's not 4.
But on the Yarilo, we know so little about the Stellarons, because we're like, oh, well, surely it cannot be that bad. We have one in our chest. We're doing fine, right? But then you can see how it changes Cocolia, right? We can see that she is literally having full-blown conversations with the Stellaron, and how it kind of insidiously influences her actions and her thoughts and changes her. And you never actually know how long. Well, you kind of have an idea how long that the Stellaron had influence on her, but you don't know how long has she been totally warped by the Stellaron, and how long has she been working towards this great vision of hers of making the planet renewed, shall we say.
Yes.
That is, I think the Stellaron is becomes this sort of, instead of, oh, well, it's just something in our chest, to this sort of menacing, very mysterious object, very powerful object that almost has its own sentience, or does have its own sentience, actually, and overshadows the whole thing. And that when you encounter it next time, which we will talk about as well, your expectations of it is so much more, because you know that how absolutely powerful and insidious it can be, that it can subvert the whole planet without much of an issue at all. So yeah. But sorry, I have interrupted you, so...
No, it's all good.
And I agree with you as well on the fact that the further you explore in Yarilo 6, and the more you kind of understand the inner workings, the more you get to appreciate through the story, and this is, I think, very, very important, through the story, through progressing through the story, through getting to know the characters, you get to appreciate how much of a wonderful world Yarilo 6 is, and how much the developers have put into it. And I think it's important to get back to this point when we talk about Penacony, because it's the opposite in Penacony, which is sad, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And I cannot stress this enough, it's the storytelling in the Yarilo 6 area is so strong that I have fallen in love with Bronya, and her relationship with Seela as well. That was done so well. the amount of times I got hit in the feels while playing that was ridiculous. And what happens to Cocolia and how Bronya has to confront her. And until the very end, I'm like, surely Cocolia is not like this evil that everybody's making her out to be. And it's just so tragic and sad when the end happens. The confrontation, and of course, after the confrontation, when you defeat the final boss in Area 6. I think it's done so well, and the pacing is superb. Not at any stage did I feel like, oh no, right, well, I wish they would hurry it up. This is like a little bit off. Throughout the whole part, throughout the whole world of Yarilo 6, throughout the whole story, it's just superb. Also, shout out to the scholar and gentleman Sampo, because you love to hate Sampo. Because whenever he shows up, you know you're gonna get screwed. But yes. So do you have anything else to add to this?
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to remember the name of the song that plays at the end of...
yes. You keep looking it up, but Josh brought up something, and then the march ruins the moment after Cocolia fight death, and now that was quite a trailblaze adventure. Yes, Josh, that was both hilarious and just the way it was done. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. And I think it was very self-aware how March just went, well, that was great, wasn't it? And like, all she needed to do was just take out the camera and start taking photos of everything, because that would have been perfect. But yes, I agree with you. March absolutely ruined that moment.
Classic anime character trope.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my favorite part, actually, the highest high out of the entire game.
Oh, damn.
The content is...
On the drugs, kids.
Is that Cocolia fight, and when the song kicks in, Wildfire.
Yes.
And you just don't expect it at all, because, like, why would you?
Why exactly? Why would you? Why would you?
It just kicks in, and I'm like, wow, this is like proper hype level. But like, not only does it have narrative implications, because like everything you've done up until that point has kind of led you to that moment, and then with Bronya confronting Cocolia and her turning into the ice monster thing, and then you're actually fighting, and the fight itself is really cool. Like it's like a boss design that they use for the the weekly missions, but also clearly there's a lot of time spent designing the boss fight. But not only that, the actual song, and the song is all about the Area 6 and the world, and it's like it's very themed in with the narrative, so it ties in well with that. And it kicks in and it goes like full like rock, like hard rock.
Yeah.
And you're like, and this it really happens. I watched like YouTube videos, like the attack comes in. And
that also happens, by the way. The music overwhelms the speaker. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, do go ahead. I just had to do that. I had to do that.
Oh, what? Oh, did you do it on the...
I cranked up the music to the max while you were speaking for a second there.
But yeah, no, when she hits her ultimate attack, she's literally like charging it up. When she charges up the attack fully, she unleashes it, and the music drops and it kicks in. And I was like, I don't think I'll ever forget that moment, because that was the highlight of the entire game for me.
No, and that is a super high point of the game. Absolutely.
Like, and it honestly hasn't been topped since. Like,
no.
Lo Fu had some cool moments.
It did.
Penacony had like one or two, but I realized that the story isn't finished. So obviously by the end of it, there could be a cool moment. But in terms of like a cool boss fight or whatever, yeah. So far, there's been one at the end of 2.0, and it was fun, but it wasn't like, oh my god. It was kind of just, oh, that's kind of cool with that new character. We made a choice, go fight against your fate. Yes.
That's exactly what I've done with when Stipple was talking. In the middle of his speech, the music, the of Snow and Ember, right, is just cranked up to the max, and yeah, that's just what happens.
It's an awesome moment. And,
it is an awesome.
Like I said, yeah. If there's one thing I'll remember about this game, it's that one moment.
No, absolutely, because that is a fantastic moment, and as you said, for me as well, it hasn't been beaten since. Zhangzhou Luofu had a few very good moments, especially when fighting the final boss. That was amazing, but it still does not top for me the fight with Mongolia.
Yeah,
and just how it was set up on the music and.
Yeah, and the like you felt that it mattered, you know, it really mattered, which I don't necessarily think they achieved with the others, the other panels so far.
And let's talk about that. Let's move on to Zhangzhou Luofu then. And so we both have issues with Zhangzhou Luofu. And if you have watched my stream, now let me talk about that first. You might have noticed that I was yawning quite a few times during the beginning of the Zhangzhou Luofu. You know why? Because it was boring. It was. The pacing was absolutely off in the first part. And it's doing these menial tasks and introducing you to the world, etc., that could have been done a little bit better to maintain that pace. It didn't help that they have introduced the switching between the characters, where you switch to Dan Heng, of course. Yep. He has a huge story beat in Zhangzhou Luofu, and a very cool story beat. But in the very beginning, it just feels like, come on, like, what? Just move a pace a bit. Move a pace a bit, people, and let's get going and let's experience the actual fun parts of the story, and which did happen towards the second part. It definitely picked up the pace, and we started being involved with this with what we thought was the main issue, and then somebody smuggled the Stellaron in, and we have this the Sanctus Medicus cult and all that fun stuff, and the story definitely picked up, and I thought that the ending was good, if not as good as the ending, of course, on Guerrilla 6. But that was, to be fair, that was very hard to beat. One thing I gotta give props to, the last area, the boss area, as you approach the boss, when the water parts, that was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it would have been even better if they had proper lighting. Alas, that's not where the budget went. But the art direction there was fantastic, and seeing the shadow of this dragon, the serpent, going through, like, back and forth, left and right as you advance through the area is just absolutely amazing. And of course, we did have an interesting story beat there with the death of Ting Yun. Oh, spoilers, by the way. Yeah, but we have already said that. And I have spoken about that on my streams, of course, before, but I think the death of Ting Yun has not been done well prior to the death and been done fantastically well after she died, which is absolutely hilarious. So the death of Ting Yun is echoed in Penacony and done even worse than that. But the issue with the Ting Yun is that while she is introduced fairly early on in the story, we never truly connect with her until the very, very end, when she starts questioning things and saying, maybe I want to be a forever lived species as well, and how does that all work, and have you ever considered that? And when that comes in, you're like, oh, well, that's actually very interesting points she brings out, and you just starting to, like, connect to her, and then it's revealed that it's not actually Ting Yun herself, and she's dead. And you're like, well, that was a shocker, but I kind of care a little bit, but not enough. But what they do really well afterwards, and I thought was like done really, really well, and that's what I actually try and do in the tabletop sessions whenever a character dies, is that it's not actually the death. The death can be random and stupid, kind of like what was with Ting Yun, but it's how you handle it afterwards that counts. And going around and finding the things, the Ting Yun's things, and going around and giving different gifts, you really start to get to know the real Ting Yun. You really start to care for her because of you understand how much of a caring of a person she was. You start to get a glimpse on her personality, how she affected the people around her, and how much they care about her, and you start to care as well. And that was done really, really well, like supremely well, and was mishandled in Penakani, which we will come to. But I gotta throw it to you, Stipple, because I think you have a few things to say and not so nice things to say about Zhangzhou Luofu compared to me, even though, of course, I did have criticisms.
Oh, hello. Meow. Meow meow.
We have a third guest on our podcast. Say hi to the audience.
Meow.
But yeah, go ahead.
A wild cat appears.
Indeed.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it pretty well. Like overall, I don't really disagree. Like the Luofu did have some nice moments, and actually the Ting Yun death. I said this in the stream as it was happening, where I had Ting Yun in my party from almost the very beginning. I picked her up, or I pulled her pretty early, and I guess because she was in my party. I'd known her for so long. I had this like connection to her through gameplay, which is kind of cool. So I kind of felt quite bad. I was like, oh shit, that was a bit of a shock. I didn't expect that, you know? And it did feel a bit bad, but not in the sense of like, I didn't feel it was necessarily earned, because like you said, it just happened quite suddenly in terms of how they built it up and actually, executed her, essentially.
Exactly, yeah.
Off with her head. Because literally like...
Literally, yes. Oh, by the way, spoilers. Yes. Okay.
Well, I mean, that was a while ago. So for me, I think the Luofu, I just didn't really want to see another Chinese-inspired area.
No,
I literally
that's
just
point.
played Genshin Impact and spent a lot of time in Liyue.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, do we really need another one of these? Like I understand that not everybody plays both games, but there's a lot of crossover as well. Like we experienced.
I'm pretty sure everybody who is watching this have definitely played. Well, okay, maybe not definitely, but definitely watched both, and most likely played both as well.
But so to me, it was just a little bit tired, and I was like, okay, like, I get it. It's made by a Chinese developer. They want to, promote China in some way, and there is interesting history there, and they want to kind of showcase that, and that's cool. But, I just come off Genshin, so it felt like I didn't really want that to be the second area in the game. So I just
which was kind of the same as in Genshin, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like they're just like, oh, let's do something similar to what we did before. Which is like, you can try new things. It's
the party mandate came over and they said, yo, there is no China in your game. You have to insert that, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I mean, the concept of like this, this massive vessel, like it was on like a huge space station essentially, right? So
yeah.
I don't feel like we ever got a sense of scale. That's the only thing I felt like they could have done better. Like I never felt like I was really on this massive space station, because again, the areas, and I think this goes down to their level design, the areas were all very, very similar. So I always felt like I was going through these I know it's a linear game and all this, but like I feel like they could have shown us, like in a game like say Final Fantasy, because I've mentioned that before, they would have like an amazing cutscene. They'd show you the entire area. They'd fly around. And be like, this is all the different things you can see here. A lot of unique stuff.
But let's go not go far at all. Final Fantasy X is your favorite Final Fantasy game. That is a corridor after corridor. However, the way the levels are designed, you do not feel like you're going through a corridor. You feel like you're traversing a living world. And that is a PS2 era game, right? So
it's old.
Very old. Yeah. So there is a way to make a corridor game not feel like you're going through corridors. And
unfortunately, Honkai in many cases does not do that super well. I feel like that is definitely a criticism overall throughout all of the planets, the space station. Yeah, like clearly that was not their priority there. Like, and it's a shame because in Genshin Impact, it's actually kind of the opposite.
Well, completely opposite. Yeah.
Like every new area was like, wow, that looks amazing. I want to go there.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to explore that. And yeah, different games, but you can do a linear game, like you said, and have unique assets in unique areas and make it look like you're actually in the place, rather than, oh, here's a level and yeah, this is the low food, but I never feel like I'm on this big, floating, massive, whatever, spaceship. It's like it's not a transport ship. Like what?
No, it's just so it's a spaceship, but it's basically like a huge. They never truly explain, they never truly show how it looks. But from what I have gathered, having read a lot of science fiction, I assume this is basically like a spherical sort of the hollowed out planetoid, right?
Exactly.
And could be not a hollowed out planetoid at all, but constructed, fully artificially constructed, which doesn't really matter, it's the same thing. Or like a huge cylinder, but
yeah, I think those were the points I really wanted to make. Yeah, I didn't want a Chinese-inspired area. Like I am interested in that kind of stuff, but I think again, just coming off of Genshin, like I think they could have, come up with something different.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us to the Penacony, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So going into the Penacony, I'll kind of gonna start first. For me, that was, and I know the story is not finished yet. That is fine, I understand that. They have just released a new part of the story, but from the story that I have experienced in 2.0, that was the weakest part of the game. It showcased how by the numbers the game is actually created. We go from planet to planet, which is the whole kind of premise of the game, right? But every time, even though there is a slight overarching plot going on, very, very slight, every time we are presented with a brand new everything. We have a brand new setup for everything, we have brand new characters, a bunch of brand new characters for everything, we have a bunch of new story beats, story plots, etc, etc, etc. It's almost like a completely separate game from what we have experienced before every time we go to a new planet. In terms of story, I'm not talking about in terms of gameplay. Gameplay is very similar, but in terms of story, it's completely new. And the issue is that when you do that, you have to set things up. It's done really well in Yarilo 6, as we have talked about that. The story lets you experience different characters, you get to know them, you get to fall in love with them, you get to fall in love with the whole world, all through the story. What they do in Penacony is they have created a Las Vegas, let's call it the way it is, it's a giant Las Vegas, with all the glitz and glamour of it. It looks spectacular. Okay, it's probably the best looking part of the Honkai Star Rail. But they were so enamored with it that they said, yo, player, we're gonna grab you by the scruff of your neck, and we're gonna show you into how amazing our world is every 2 seconds. And not just a look at this, this is beautiful, but in terms of, hey, there is so much to this world. Oh, look at this, there are so many different factions. Oh, look at this. This is like, you know, there is a dreamscape, which is a cool idea, by the way. But it's like, oh, let us just dump a bajillion of hours of exposition onto you. Oh, and by the way, you meet this amazing character, Firefly. You know you should care about her, and you know why? Because the game tells you should care about her. The game tells you she's your friend. How soon after you meet her, she becomes your friend? Almost immediately. Maybe after a few lines of conversation, she became your friend. You start caring for her. And she just dumps exposition upon exposition upon exposition onto you until, and we'll circle back to that, we come to a point where she says, I paraphrase here, but she says something to the effect is, when you're down and when you're vulnerable, the best thing you can do is to take these tokens from me and go and gamble. And that is the best thing when you are in a vulnerable state. So do that right now. And unless you do, the game, the main story plot, does not progress. They kill her afterwards, by the way, yes. And they tell you, you should care about her because... And you care less about her than Tingyun. And after death, you literally pick up one memory, and the game tells you, you were such good friends, you should care for her. And you don't. Like, you literally do not give a flying about her at all.
Yeah. No, what about? But they did play the lovely piano tune with the beautiful female voice when you were staring out at the dream city, and you're supposed to really care. You know, do you remember that part?
I remember that part really well because, as Josh in a chat will tell you, that was when she was gonna mug us, and she mugged us of our. Yes, hit us over the head and mugged us of our ability to care about her. I agree, she tried, but she failed. Exactly. She tried, but she failed. That was another point. So this was the first time they said, you know what? We're gonna hit you in the feels. You're gonna hear this absolutely haunting, beautiful melody. And you know you're gonna feel things because you are such good friends with her, because for the past 3 hours, she's been dumping so much exposition onto you. Surely you will care about her now. Oh, she's terminally ill, she's gonna die.
Yeah.
I feel for you, girl, but I still don't care. You did not make me care in those 2 hours. Neither about the world, by the way, which you really tried hard, nor about the Firefly, which you really told me to care about her hard, nor now when you are literally saying, this is the time for you to cry, dear player, and you're like, no, it's not, because I don't care. And you get to care a little bit more about her during your trip afterwards in a dreamscape, when you get trapped, but not enough to actually care about her death either. So yes.
Yeah, no, I don't really disagree with you on any of those points, because the writing, I think I was a little bit disconnected when I was playing Penacony.
Yeah.
So I kind of just did the quest, and I was playing Final Fantasy VII at the time, which was, much better. Let's face it, the characters and the storytelling is just, infinitely better. But yeah, I just kind of did it because I wanted to progress, and I liked the world, like the visuals. So what I will say, I actually really liked just the visuals. I thought it was a step up in terms of their the presentation.
Yes.
If you want to put it that way, because as we've talked about in Muriel 6 and Jan Zhou Fu and all that, I wasn't that impressed compared to Genshin. So yeah, I think Penacony was a step up. And visually, I think it was really pretty, and it was interesting running around the dreamscape, the dream world, whatever you want to call it. And also we got Black Swan, so you know, that was probably a better or a highlight compared to the actual story. Like getting Black
Swan was
and using it as a character. She's really good.
Oh god! Like
really
when she's not in your party, but when she's being this support that guides you, is that what?
Oh yeah.
Is that the party you're talking about?
Well, I'm talking about that, and also getting
and having her in a party, right?
Once you have a damage over time team, and then she comes in the main story, you're like unstoppable.
That was so good.
You're like, do you want more dots? Oh yes. Well, I'm gonna give you more.
You can never have enough dots.
Let's get more unlimited dots.
Unlimited dots.
But yeah, like to be honest, up until well, like say if we talk about spoilers until the very end of 2.0, which is when you meet Sam.
Oh yeah.
I thought the design of Sam, and obviously he's going to be a character that you can pull for.
No way. You reckon?
And his the boss mechanics and the way he's presented, I thought was really cool. It was a cool moment.
Yes.
But in terms of like the lead up all the way there, it kind of stumbled along until you got to the boss, and the boss was cool and it was memorable, but the rest of it maybe not so much. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we already, because I have a favorite part of the game as next point of talk, but I think we already covered that. I think for both of us, that was Yarila 6, and specifically the Cocolia resolution, shall we say, because it's not just the boss battle that was amazing. It was the whole part just leading up to it, and then the battle and the resolution of the battle. That was fantastic.
And in terms of the narrative, yes. And I think we'll get into like the gameplay and the combat, now, because we haven't really talked about it.
Which is my next point of thing. So what are your thoughts on the combat mechanics? Maybe versus Genshin, but actually we don't need to have Genshin in that. What are your thoughts on combat mechanics in Honkai Star Rail as a standalone game without going into Genshin?
Yeah. The mechanics are completely different. So we've talked enough about Genshin, and we liked it to an extent, but due to the gacha mechanics, it didn't quite work for us overall.
So let's talk about it.
But yeah, for Honkai Star Rail, I actually loved I quite loved the mechanics of the combat system.
Yep, agreed.
And I love that you actually get a lot of characters that you can play around with, and you can actually make meaningful choices straight up very, very quickly into the game because of the more generous and slightly fairer system that we discussed. So I never felt that I wasn't able to build a party that I wanted to build. Like, especially if you're just talking the core 4-party system. So I'm not talking about adding having the 2 parties, which is another
we'll come to that in a second.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the straight up 4-party system, turn-based mechanics, energy system, which is actually quite unique. I haven't encountered one like this one before. I don't know.
And I think when you're talking about energy system, I think it's behooves us to clarify what you're talking about is the skill point and the energy to build up ultimates during the combat, and not the daily energy system that you spend to do your dailies and to gain resources. So just we're talking about the combat part of that. So I'll let you finish my thought, but the mechanics of that.
Yes, I'm strictly talking about the gameplay mechanics in combat. So in combat, I do really like the energy management system, and the reason why it works well is that you really need to think about your party composition. And you need to think about, I can have a DPS character, yes, but that DPS character is most likely going to be using, their energy every turn. So they're going to want to charge up.
You're talking about skill points.
Sorry, so I keep saying energy, but I do mean skill points.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm talking about the skill point system. So the DPS characters generally, pretty much all of them, require a lot of
They do require a lot of energy, yes.
Oh my god. They require a lot of skill points. So every time it's their turn, they want to essentially use a skill point. In most cases. So what that means is not all of your party can be characters that use skill points every turn. And that's where your supports come in, that's where your preservation comes in. Your sustain comes in. What? Sorry?
That's where your Ting Yin comes in.
The Ting Yin comes in. We have Natasha as the first healer that you find in your level 6.
Yep.
So she's great for a while, and I did use her, and at least you get that free healer character, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But you need one sustain, so essentially either a healer or a preservation character that uses shields. So there's different types of healing in the game, which is again interesting. It adds more complexity because shields effectively give you more effective health. So if you have 2,000 HP, you put shields on, you can grant extra HP over your 2,000, which is really good. But then you can have a standard healer, which is like you take damage and then you can heal it back to your max HP. So there's depth there already. Then you have like your harmony characters, which are like your damage boosters. Sorry.
Do you want me to take over for a bit if you want to cough it out, or?
Give me let me see if I can get through it.
Okay, go for it.
So you have your harmony characters.
And don't feel like you need to explain every single part of the way that the system works, as because I'm sure that a lot of the viewers would actually have an idea, but maybe what your thoughts are on the system, what your unique take on it is.
Well, I'm kind of getting to the point that I do really enjoy that all of those elements of the system. That's what adds the complexity, and that's what I was kind of explaining there, where it's not just one type of character. You have all these different classes essentially in the game and roles. So it really adds a lot of depth and complexity to the combat. And then you have to think about, like some supports and some characters do actually require skill point usage. Yeah. So if you have too many of those, even though they're supports, like for example, Branya, she's a very skill point hungry character, and she gives damage buffs to your party and crit damage and all that kind of stuff. So like you really need to think about your composition, and because the game does dole you out a bunch of characters pretty early on, it's fun to pick the ones that you get and the ones that you might like to try. Yeah. Especially once you get a 5-star, you're like, oh, I'm probably going to build that 5-star character because it's really useful. And then that's why we built Dr. Ratio as an example. So
yeah,
I really like the combat basically,
and you're not only building Dr. Ratio, which I think really need to inhibit the Luna just devour skill points. Absolutely, Josh. But when we're talking about building up Dr. Ratio, you're not building up Dr. Ratio. Well, you do. You're also building up the whole party around them, because you have usually the parties work best when you have one person who dishes out the most damage, and then the rest of the party is there to support him and to make to basically buff him as much as you can.
Yeah, your hyper carry role. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. And that's what makes it so interesting, because because you have so many characters given to you, you can actually experiment a little bit and tinker with swapping up characters and who would actually be better to make to carry Dr. Ratio forward and to boost him in such a way that maybe even complement him in damage, etc. And that's what makes the combat mechanics are so fantastic in Honkai, at least. But yeah, anything else that you have to add to that?
Oh, well, obviously we have to talk about the auto battle system.
We do. But do you want to mention about the resource management in... Because I thought that you wanted to mention that in the actual combat.
In the like skill point management.
Resource management as part of the combat mechanics.
Do you mean so now you're talking about building characters?
No, I'm talking about combat mechanic here. So right. So in our previous conversations, and you were much more eloquent about describing that to me. So I will try to be as eloquent as you were. The whole combat revolves around skill points, as you said, that you have to expand them all the time, and around energy. And the whole combat is not actually just about dishing out the most amount of damage, but it is about resource managing the skill points and energy of characters so that you not only dish out damage, but also make sure that you have sustain for all of the characters not to die while you're doing that.
Yes.
And it's a constant tug of war that you are trying to gather as many skill points as you can, and then to dish out as much damage as you can. And it's always this kind of more skill points, more damage, more skill points, more heal, more skill points. Do I spend the skill point to hopefully do last attack, or do I spend the skill point on healing my characters? Because if I don't, everybody's dead. Dave. Everybody's dead. Who knows if you get the reference? But yes, so yeah, and that's what makes the combat mechanics are so really well kind of meshed together, right?
No, you're 100% right. No, you described it well there. Yeah, like it is the constant tug and pull because you're it's the opportunity cost of if I use a skill, I'm forfeiting that for maybe a carry character to use that skill. So yeah, and then it gets interesting because the game is quite flexible where you don't need to always go with the hyper carry format. You could go with a DPS and a sub DPS. And it actually works quite well in the damage over time type of
Black Swan, Gwyn builds, for example.
Yeah, Black Swan, Gwyn, Kafka. If you have Kafka,
or like Black Swan's Sampo builds.
Yeah, exactly. But you can introduce a character that is maybe like is not a skill point hungry, but they will still dish out a lot of damage, and they will supplement your main DPS. So it's like you still have. You're not focusing on one character, so if that one character gets taken out, you're not like down to 0 damage. You can still potentially defeat your enemy. So that adds more kind of dynamics and complexity to the system as well. So I do really like what they did, and I genuinely haven't seen one like a game that has done this type of system before. Like we've obviously seen turn-based games, JRPGs. But the way that it handles the resource management in and outside of combat, it's it does mesh well with the rest of the game.
Yeah. And so just to kind of jump or riff off what Josh is saying there in the chat, Inhibitor Lunae, I think, is a very good example of how the game utilizes that. So Inhibitor Lunae is a character that needs a lot of skill points to basically become Super Saiyan, right? And I'm sure everybody should be getting that reference. Basically buff up and become this god. Of course, that is showcased by him consuming a lot of skill points immediately, and the Hoyo releasing, of course, Sparkles, who is a perfect accompaniment for Inhibitor Lunae, or Imbibitor Lunae, rather than Inhibitor, because, she grants you extra skill points above and beyond, and, of course, does skill point restore, etc., so which is really fantastic. And yes, quadruple Sampo build would be absolutely insane. Right, but let's move on to the next part of our conversation, and we're just gonna touch on it very, very lightly, and that's the puzzles in the game. I really appreciate the puzzles in the game. And if you have watched me before, you know that every time I see a puzzle, I beeline for it and I do that puzzle because I really, really like puzzlers in general, as a unique game, right, rather than part of another game. But I think that the puzzles are done well, and there are a lot of variety of puzzles in the game. However, the one thing, if I was to give one criticism, is because they are trying to do new puzzles every single expansion, or maybe not expansion, but every single world. The puzzles, while interesting, are too easy. They are, because all of the puzzles, or I think 99% of the puzzles, or maybe 99.9% of the puzzles, are optional content. And I find that the puzzles are too easy because they are just trying to get like a short bunch of them and then move on to the next set of puzzles that they have created for the next world.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to see a progressive kind of, instead of having a new set of puzzles every single time, they would add a layer of complexity. In the next world, the puzzles become more complex. Being total optional part of the game, that would have allowed the players who enjoy puzzles more to actually engage more and be more invested with that part of mechanics. In my opinion, that would have been better way for them to do the puzzles, instead of doing lots of different types of puzzles. But I quite a few times I just felt like, yeah, once you kind of understand how the puzzle works, a lot of the times it's just underbaked. I think Penacony mirror puzzle thing, where you kind of do a little, where you guide the clocky to get to different parts and get the cogs with the mirror, showcases how kind of it's not the main focus of the game, and how not really well thought out some of them can be. Some of them can be devilish and fantastic, but then others, you kind of just make it one way, you move the mirror, the character moves, gets to where he needs to go, and then he needs to go somewhere else, and you literally don't do anything because the mirror is already in place, and they automatically go and finish the puzzle. And it's like, well, isn't that supposed to be a two-part puzzle? Why does solving the first part solve the second part as well? And kind of that sort of situations just made me really kind of sad, because I do like the puzzles, and made me think that maybe concentrating on one type of the puzzle and building up complexity would have been a better course of action there. But what about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think to me it felt more like the breadth of the puzzles felt like an ocean, but the depth of them was
It's like a puddle.
Yeah, they're paddling pool for little kids. They were fun. Like, don't get me wrong, I did enjoy a lot of them. It's just they were lacking the depth. And to be fair to them, in Penacony, they did introduce an area, some of that kind of event content where you could do more difficult versions of puzzles, which was fantastic, because in the other areas that didn't really exist.
No.
So I think they get that, people like some of the existing puzzles they already have, so why not just build upon those? That's a great idea. Why not do that? And I enjoyed doing those harder difficulty ones. Some of them were actually a little bit challenging. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you did those as well, did you?
Yeah, I finished all of that kind of special event.
Yeah, it was fun. Like,
it was fun.
I had a lot of fun. Some of them are better than others, of course. Yeah, like the detective thing is just very basic, I found, overall.
It's almost like an afterthought. It's like, oh, we need to do this kind of side game.
Variety for variety's sake, I think,
Yeah.
So, overall, liked puzzles, maybe add a bit more depth. Keep doing those events where you add more difficulty. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Okay, cool. Well, we kind of come to the meat of the matter here. Progression and gacha mechanics. And this is touchy subject for many people, because the game can be fantastic in many ways. But the gacha mechanics are always part of the gacha games. And my question here is, compared to Genshin, but really, compared to Genshin is not really a proper comparison though. Because we have already spoken that Genshin is a little bit stingier and Honkai is a little bit more front-loaded. So why don't we talk about just the progression and gacha mechanics in Honkai? And I'll go first on this because I feel like you have gotten a little bit further than me, but I feel like I have been slighted a bit more because of the fact that you really do need to have 2 teams of characters, so that's 8 characters. You need to level up. You need to level up their light cones. You need to level up their traces in order to experience all parts of the game. Not the story, but everything else as well, because there are a lot of interesting parts of the game apart from the story, like simulated universe, like more challenging combats, etc. We're talking about the mirror thing. What is it called? Keep forgetting every single time.
MOC, well, for short.
MOC, memory of something.
Memory of chaos? Chaos.
Yeah, memories of chaos. That's what they're called. But there are those parts of the game. Forgotten Hall. That's the one, Josh. Thank you so much, my man. Thank you so much. I do. Forgotten Hall.
Josh is the man.
Josh is... Forgotten Hall is indeed a fitting name, yes.
I forgot about it for a while.
I have forgotten about it immediately. But those are the parts of the game that you have certain characters gated behind those mechanics, and you need to engage with them if you want to get those characters. And so you really need to have 2 teams. And this is where I have fallen off the game, because very similar to Genshin, sneakily enough, while the experience is front-loaded and you can experiment a lot in the beginning of the game, the moment you start going into these parts where you do need to have 2 teams fully leveled up, fully light cone leveled up, fully tracered up to your Trailblaze level, of course, all of a sudden you're starting to get that part. If you're playing free-to-play, and we're gonna cover non-free-to-play in 1 second right after this actually, all of a sudden you start hitting that ceiling. You're out of money, you're out of resources, you have to do daily grinds, and it starts to become, even though you are doing auto battle, which maybe ties in really well into this, we haven't talked about that yet, but it ties in really well into this. You have to do auto battle, and it's pretty fast and easy to do dailies, but it's still something that you have to log in and do every single day.
Yeah.
And thinking about building up your characters is fun, and what to prioritize, etc. It is fun, but that makes you kind of think about the game all the time. And my biggest issue is that the game started feeling like it was work for me. Like I had to engage with it, otherwise I felt like I was missing out all the time. And what am I missing out on? Well, I'm not really missing out on anything, but here, in my head, it feels that if I'm not doing it, I'm missing out, and I have to be able to grind through it. I have to upgrade my characters. I have to get enough money. I have in-game money. And I have to have these 2 teams the best they can be in order to engage with all of the content. And the wall you hit is pretty substantial, and I haven't even hit the wall that Stipple will tell you about, because of course if you have gotten to level 70 plus, all of a sudden that wall becomes almost insurmountable. Not insurmountable, but almost insurmountable. But Stipple, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit of your thoughts on this, because that is when the game kind of broken down for me.
Yeah, so yeah, when you get to Trailblazer level 60 plus, so the cap is 70, and I got to 60. I got to 61 or 2 recently. So once you hit 60, you've unlocked almost everything that the game has to offer. You can essentially go into your character progression and level them up to level 80, which is the current cap, and then you can level up all the traces all the way up, like the whole shebang, everything on the grid. So that's nice, but the problem is that it takes so much time and energy. So this is leading into the energy.
Daily energy now, not the energy inside of the combat mechanics.
Yeah, you have energy per day, so your trailblazer power or energy, and yeah, so you have limited quantities. So you have 240 in Honkai Star Rail. You can go over that. You have that reserve energy if you miss a day or two, whatever amount of time you miss. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're limited in your progression based on the daily grind. And up until, when you get to Trailblazer 50, it doesn't seem that bad, because you get your characters up to level 60, and you can get 4 characters to 60, no problem. Light comes to 60, no problem. Then you get to 70, and yeah, you start to feel the grind a little bit. There's a steady kind of incline. You definitely start. It's like if you're cycling up a hill, or like even running up a hill. That's kind of the feeling where it's like, okay, it's starting to get harder. I definitely feel it. I'm getting there. And then you reach the apex of the hill, and you get to Trailblazer 60, and that's where they just crank up the resource cost to like not infinity, but you're literally talking. I was looking at this to get from level to level up your character from like 75 to 80 in terms of resources, in terms of those XP experience books that the game uses, and the credits. You're talking like you can level one of your 4-star characters from like almost 1 to 60, maybe 1 to 55, something like that, based on those last 5 levels. Yeah, and it's kind of insane when you think about it that way. Like the game clearly is designed to kind of be more friendly towards you in the earlier levels, so that it feels like you can attain and hit those max, the higher levels, and then you get your characters up to level 70, and you're like, okay, this is not so bad, and then you unlock the last stage of the game, and this is where it becomes like a proper grind. And I actually did feel that my resources were completely they just disappeared. My credits were gone, my XP books were gone, my Litecoin books were completely gone. And then you're like, well, I guess I'm back to just daily grinding. I've used up most of my fuel. I have almost like no fuel left. Like what's left? Literally nothing. So I have to log in every day. And then it's like, it is the FOMO, man. You're not competing against anyone but yourself. But at the same time, if you're in tune with the game, you're going to be checking out other content creators and be like, well, if I want to build Acheron, and I actually did get Acheron, and she's amazing. I built her up to level 75. I upgraded almost all her traces. I pre-farmed for a few days. And then I'm like, well, if I want to have 2 parties, I still need to get another sustain character. And oh my god, I need to level up Gallagher, the new sustain guy, and he works really well with Acheron. So I leveled it up to 60, and then by that time I got his Lycan up to like 70, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's it. That's like, I can do no more. It's over. And then I have all these other characters that I need to level up. And when you think about that, if you're leveling 8 characters and you're focusing on like one thing at a time. So say one day you're like, I'm going to level up to, say Lacaron's traces, and then the next day I do Dr. Ratio, and the other day I do something else. Like, yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot in the moment when you're setting your guys to auto farm, you're hitting the auto battle. Yeah. You're saying, daily stuff takes 10 minutes max, right? But then you're starting to think about it every day more and more. It really does get in your head, and I find that's what happened to me, where you're like, okay, no, if I miss this day, oh my god, my characters are gonna fall behind. This is awful. I can't do this anymore. And it's like, it becomes really negative, and it's this negative feedback loop, and you feel like I was kind of getting anxious about it, which was like when you start becoming aware of it. You realize that I am kind of addicted to this loop.
And actually, let's that was kind of a little bit further down on my list, but let's talk about that, because addiction is important. It is a topic that probably is avoided by a lot of people in the gacha or any other type of gambling industry. But that is an important topic to talk about. And I feel that you are touching on that now. So let's do continue talking about it.
Yeah.
Get all your feelings out, and then I gonna recount my own experience. And then we're gonna touch on a little bit of Penacony as well, because that kind of ties in for me into that whole experience. But do go ahead.
Yeah, no, like literally just like I was explaining, getting the new character Akron, which is, everybody's hyped for that, and it's great and it's fun, and I got the character. It took me, everyone's talking about how many pulls did he get. Like, there is this community aspect to it, but it's it does go back to, like, you feel like you kind of need to use your resources, and at some point you're saving. Why are you saving all these stellar jades? Why are you saving all these tickets, all these pulls? And then you're gonna have to use them at some point. And the reason you're saving them all up is because you want to get as many as possible, so that you're guaranteed the character that you want.
Yeah.
And this is where the pity system comes in, and it's you get your 50-50 chance once you get your 5-star, so it's not even guaranteed the first time around, but then you're guaranteed it the second. And it just means that it all, like, this comes down to a gacha game problem. It's not Honkai Star Rail.
It's not Honkai just, but it's the gacha kind of issue. But
broad terms, like all of the games use this kind of system where, like X amount of pulls will guarantee you your 5-star, but then you're still not guaranteed the one you want. And the limited banners, they're called limited banners for a reason, because they're going to go away. They have that, fear of missing out element as well, because you're like, okay, well, I have to save for this character because they're gonna leave, and then if I don't get it now, I have to play the game for another 5 months, 6 months until they rerun the character. It becomes this kind of like almost like a treadmill.
No, absolutely.
Where you're like, oh, when we get my next one, and I have to plan the other one. It can be, like, I understand it can be fun for people to plan out their resources, and it is a resource management game at its heart.
Yeah.
But it's feeding into, like, the opening of the boxes, or
engaging with the gacha.
Yeah, exactly, and it's all tied into the fundamental design of the game.
And actually, let me just intercede there for a second, because that was my second part of it. So we haven't actually gone into the addiction part, but let's have a look at, let's say, because that is a very, very kind of on my mind right now, because we were both saving up for Acheron, and we were both trying to get as many tickets as possible to get her. So, on average, to get an E0 character, so let's say Acheron in this instance, you would need roughly 100 tickets. That includes 50-50, losing the 50-50, right? So that means that you need 16,000 stellar jades in order to do that, if you're doing it free to play. But let's say you really wanted her, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna pay money to get Acheron. So to get 16,000 stellar jades, you need 16,000 oneric shards, which are sold in very weird batches. So you would need 2 batches. If you are a first-time buyer, you would need to spend 99.99 pounds plus another batch of 29.99. £129.98 if you're the first-time buyer for one character.
That's £629, you said, yes?
£129.98 for one character.
Sorry, 129.
£129.98. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So
if you're not the first-time buyer, it's £249.97.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, so say the first value, that's in US dollars, just because everybody might be more familiar with US dollars. That's about $165.
$165, yeah.
For if you're buying those for the first time.
Well, the first time, and then it goes away, so you have to buy it.
Yeah.
Normal. Right, so £250 basically, which is what, about $300 roughly?
$315. Yeah.
$315, right? For if you're not buying it for the first time. This is just for the E0 character. If you decide to get the Litecoin as well, on average it's about 90 tickets, including 75-25%. So if you lose that, so on average you need about 90 tickets to pull a Litecoin, and that is 14,400 Stellar Jades or Honoric Shards, making it 114.98, so 115 pounds for the first-time buyer, or 230 pounds if you're not a first-time buyer.
Yeah, so that's not much different actually than the character.
It's not. It's a little bit less, but not much difference. No.
No, it's not a huge. I thought that would be a bit higher because of the 75-25, but I guess not.
So, and of course, if you want to get both, that's 245 pounds if you're the first-time buyer, or a whopping 480 pounds if you're not a first-time buyer. Right?
Right.
But let's say you want to get the best of Acheron, because Acheron is your girl, she's your waifu, she is the bae that you're gonna have for the rest of your life, and you want her to be the best of the best of the best of the best. You're gonna go for E6 Acheron and S5 Litecoin, right?
Yeah.
This is it. She's gonna be tooled out. She's gonna be your bae. Now, one thing, to get to S5 superimpose 5 of the Litecoin, you need to get 5 Litecoins. To get to E6 character, you need to have 7 characters pulled. Yeah? So it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's almost a little insidious.
They changed that for characters versus Litecoins, which is interesting.
Which is very, very interesting. So, if you're looking to get E6 character, as a first-time buyer, you only need to spend £909.86, which is probably about $1,000, right? If we're talking about in USD dollars. Dollars.
That's almost $1,150, actually.
Oh, wow. There you go. 1,150 almost. If you're not a first-time buyer, it's £1,749.79, which is basically 175, which is probably about 2,300?
2,200-ish, yeah.
$2,200, yeah?
Yeah.
This is on average. So, Josh, this is on average. So we're talking about 100 tickets on average. You need to get 1 character. So on average, this is what you're going to be spending. If you're super lucky, of course, you're not going to be spending that. But if you're extremely unlucky and you need 180 tickets to get 1 character because you're going to lose 50-50, then it's much, much more. And then it's to the order of 90 extra tickets more. So, but we're talking about average. How about that?
Yeah. So,
and this is just for the character. For the Litecoin, it is £575, which is about, $700, $800 if you're a first-time buyer, or £1,150 if you are not a first-time buyer. And again, we're talking about this is now $1,600,000, or $1,600, should I say. So, the marriage of them together, because of course you have to have the best Acheron possible, right? Is $2,899.64, otherwise known as about $3,600, $3,700 or so.
Yep.
And I want to point out to a little disclaimer by the Hoyo there. At the bottom left, right where you can spend all your money to buy your own Eric shards, it says, "Please play in moderation and spend rationally." How in the absolute goddamn world is spending $3,500, $3,600 on 1 character is being rational?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, if you want to get E6 and S5, But seriously, people do go into crippling debt for this. Like,
Yeah,
my
the
car
problem is
costs
it's
exactly the same amount of money as this, as one pixelated character in the game.
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah, like the people in the chat, and we don't spend this kind of money, but someone out there does, and some people have gambling problems where they feel like they can't and they have to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's like they can't control their inhibitions.
Yeah.
And that is the problem.
And that is a huge problem. And because the game is designed so if you really want E6, because let's face it, you cannot do free to play and get E6. Like, if you are ridiculously lucky, but that is what, 1 in bajillion chance of you doing that?
I've seen images on the app where people post in screenshots of like, oh, I got 3 sparkles in one temple.
That's Photoshop, guys. Okay, that's Photoshop.
I know.
That's the power of Photoshop.
I'm sure it happens, but like the chances are like 1 in a million people might get that.
Yeah.
In their entire.
When Raiden Shogun was coming out, I seen on Hoyo app, I seen people having like 5 Raiden Shoguns in a row. No, and like every single post was, oh, look what I got today, and you're like, yeah, you wish you got that.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting to look at the actual costs and what some people are paying, because the game wouldn't make I think it made 1.4 billion in 2021. I saw that figure.
I'm sure it did. Yeah,
that's the US dollars. So the game does not make 1.4 billion off of people buying the pass that I bought for €5.
Exactly.
That's not what they're making the money. They're making the money on the whales and the people that are spending thousands of dollars on the game.
Yeah, and as you have mentioned sometime during our conversations earlier, you have looked up a statistic where, on average, the daily fuel spent for daily grind is not 250, and this is on average, but something to do with 580 or something like that, or you're saying it's closer to 700?
I think it was closer to 700. It was a YouTube video. Statistics analysis guy, and he basically looked at the numbers and he was saying, the average fuel.
And you can spend money to buy fuel, by the way, so.
Yeah, there was a survey that Hoyo did themselves, and this data was available at the time. So this was like maybe 5-6 months after launch, so last year at some point. And it was something around the 600 to 700 mark on average per player, which means that obviously the whales spend a lot more, but which increases the it skews it up. But at the same time, that just means that everybody at some point, or most players that aren't free to play, would spend a little bit of money to make sure that they get more for their grind per day, the most value. So
so what are your thoughts on the game, bro? What are your thoughts on the game? Because here we are.
My thoughts are.
And maybe tell you what you have done last couple of days, maybe, or couple of days ago, should I say? Maybe to summarize your thoughts first.
Well, I think we've talked enough about we've covered everything that we thought about Honkai Star Rail, but I recently mentioned just a little while ago that I got to Trailblazer rank 60, and that's where I really start feeling the wall in terms of the grind. I got Acheron, which was the brand new character. That was fun. I was like, great, let's level her up. I did that. I pre-farmed. So I used her for a day, and that was fun. And then I said, you know what? I think I'm kind of done with this because I'm sick of the grind, and I know that I've used up all my resources now. So if I focus on, say, one character per day, not even one character, like literally one aspect of the character, whether that be the light cone or the traces or the character level, I'm just going to be playing this game for months. And I made the decision to not do that anymore. So I clicked on the uninstall button on my phone. I went to my PlayStation and I uninstalled the game there. I went to my computer, I uninstalled there. It's like it's been wiped from my my digital existence, and I don't intend on coming back. So yeah.
There we go. There we go. And so, as from my perspective, I was trying to get. So I got Acheron, I got her Lightcon, E0, of course, and S1, whatever, S0, S1. But I have been trying to get her. I got her to level 70, which is the max level for my Trailblaze level. I tried to get the Lightcon up, and then I was just like, you know what? No. I want to try her out, but really, grinding so much is just, it's soul draining, and I have been spending too much time on the game itself, which we will cover in just a second, actually. It was affecting my mental well-being. And yesterday, I have uninstalled the game as well. So, is Honkai Star Rail a good game? In my opinion, while it is a good game itself, just very similar to Genshin Impact, the gacha mechanics are the thing that bring the game down. And if you engage with them to the minimum of your abilities, very similar to, I think, what Yuri does. They are at Trailblaze level or character level 50, and they're going through Penacony. So the leveling is still fairly easy.
Yeah.
They are taking it slow, etc. There is a lot of fun to have in the game. However, know that eventually you will get there if you play the game, and there will be a wall, and you'll have a decision to make. Are you gonna be spending all your time grinding, thinking about the game, doing extra things apart from grinding, all the side content, etc., 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 weeklies, dailies, all that fun or not so fun stuff? Or are you gonna go and spend money on it? Or maybe it's time to uninstall the game. So in that regard, very, very mixed feelings. With a Genshin, I immediately I say no, the game is not for me. It's not a good game. With Honkai, there is a good game out there. There is a good game. It's just that the way it's designed is designed to A, make you addicted, and B, make you to spend money on it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Stipple?
Yeah, no, there's not much more I can say because I agree with everything. If you were to somehow be able to, click your fingers and remove the gacha mechanics and systems out of the game, yeah, the game you could say would be objectively good then. But the thing is, it'll have to change the game completely because all those systems are designed around the whole gacha mechanics concept. So yeah, it's a tough one. Where I actually did enjoy my experience with Honkai Star Rail a lot more than I did with Genshin Impact. I'll
Absolutely.
Without a doubt, I actually did derive some enjoyment out of it, and I will remember some of those moments, like we mentioned. Eurilo 6 being a big highlight, and Controlia, yes. And there were some moments after that, but mostly those. And I did really enjoy the gameplay. I did like the combat system, I must say, but when it came to the grind, there's just too much grinding, and it's again not a game for me that I can play every day for the next year and just wait for the next content patch. It's cool that they're able to do that. Like, props to the dev team to be able to release new content every 6 weeks. But then I think the detriment, actually, in some ways, the game dilutes itself over time because they have to keep releasing this stuff. They have a hard deadline of pretty much, I know it varies, it's not every 6 weeks to the dot, they do change it slightly, but within 6 to 7 weeks is generally the timeline. And what that means is they have to think really long term. They're going to be, this game's going to be around for 10 years or whatever. We're going to dole out those updates very slowly. You're going to get a little bit of trickle of story every now and again. We're going to release new characters every patch so that you want to call for those new characters. That's the experience.
That's how we make money, so that's the experience you're getting. Yeah.
And you might enjoy that. You might like that game that it doesn't necessarily demand. Maybe you're not addicted. Maybe you're like, I just like hopping on for 10 minutes and that's fine. And then or I don't even play it every day and I enjoy the experience. Fine. But for me, I feel like I either play it every day and I get the most out of the resources and the grind, or I don't play it at all and I decided to not play it at all. So,
No, and that's exactly how I feel. So I think there is nothing more to say about that.